Good morning, folks. 1:21 in the morning. I go to sleep pretty early, 7 or 8. I'd love to sleep through the whole night. And this getting up in the middle of the night, the problem is I make mistakes. I mistake the date. I misspell things that are real simple. I'm stuck with the errors in the titles, so I get to see those and give myself a kick later on because I didn't proofread. I didn't take my time. Oh, it is Friday morning. I'm going to pump some iron today for sure. The winds are blowing outside. It reminds me of when Harp was blowing in the interior of Alaska. And I remember the 1st of January where I went out on the balcony and the doggone pine tree next to the balcony outside was budding, blooming on the 1st of January in Alaska. Talk about the timing being off. And that's all because Harp was cranked up in the interior and was causing warm winds to waft down through the whole interior of Alaska, right to Anchorage. It was uncanny how warm it got, melted everything. Harp is built in a particular spot in Galena, Alaska. Why? So it would have a good power source. You see, that thing takes a lot of energy. So they built it on the largest natural gas line in the world. I believe it's 4 feet in diameter. Imagine that, a 4-foot gas line, 4 feet across. How much gas would be going at one time? So that's what they power that thing with. Now there's a bigger array in Australia, but none of the other arrays has got the power that Alaska has. And that thing will reach out, will knock the snot out of the upper ionosphere, and it will make it look like you've got global warming. And you got to have an excuse for all those weather anomalies. And you can project that power around the world. And you can focus it on one part of the sky and concentrate it, and you can get a blast about the size of a nuclear bomb. I'm not sure. I don't know. A lot of that remains classified. They were supposed to shut it down, then University of Fairbanks, Alaska Fairbanks, took it over. There was a great event. Tunguska, I think is what it was called. There's a place in Siberia, opposite Alaska. Trees still don't grow. Nothing grows there to this day since the blast. And I believe that blast was in the 30s, 1930s. So here's the story. There was a fellow, a young boy, who had his favorite toy. And he needed a lot of money to fund his toy. And his daddy took away his money so he couldn't fund his toy. And the problem was a little boy was onto some amazing discoveries, and he was going to be able to power the earth. Lorraine, leave it. Lay down. Get your bone. He was going to be able to give free energy across the whole planet. His papa didn't like that too much because Daddy wanted to make some money off his son's invention. So he took the money away, and as he took it away, the son had a tantrum, had a fit. The boy was very bright. And there was this admiral. I think it was Byrd. And he was going up to the North Pole on a famous expedition. Big to do about this. Guy's going to go up on an expedition to the North Pole. That was very, very dangerous expedition. Lorraine, lay down. Lay down. Down. What did I say? Down. Good girl. So he decided he was going to show his papa up. He was going to put on a display of energy, a display of strength. Because papa didn't understand that he had built basically this giant gun. Big piece of artillery. And he decided He was going to light up the world for about 3 days and 3 nights. He was going to hit the earth with such a blast from his electrical artillery that it was going to stay lit like daylight for 3 days and 3 nights. And you see, this admiral was up there in the dark of wintertime. So he figured it was going to be helpful to the admiral in his expedition because he'd light it up for them. They'd be able to see everything. There's only one problem. He was a genius, and he set this machine up, and he did all the calculations. He had it set. This thing was going to go right up to the North Pole and light it up right up there. It was supposed to be a safe thing to do. By God, when he set this doggone thing off, an owl, a big owl, maybe a great horned owl, flew into the beam and knocked the beam off track. And that owl disappeared. Just killed the owl, just gone. And his little gun sent that bolt of lightning, if you will, up, and the owl, just going into it at the time he launched it, deflected it, and it came down on Tunguska. And you see, the Russians knew where it came from because they could calculate it too, because they had a very obvious trajectory. And they backtracked that thing to where it was, where that little boy had his toy on Manhattan Island. Wycliffe Tower. Within 6 weeks after he detonated that piece of, I guess it became desert, it was forest up there, blasted those trees, and nothing grows there to this day. And it's what? Almost 100 years later? I don't know the name. I don't remember the year this happened. And I'll be darned. The Russians had spies over there, were looking at this weapon of his, and they had to take it down because that's what they viewed it as, a weapon. That's what it was. And that was one of the first uses of it. And J.P. Morgan still would not fund it, because he wanted to be able to put a meter on it and be able to charge for it. He didn't want to give away free electricity to the world. He was narrow-minded, short-minded. That may not have been the first time that he used Wycliffe. We know that the longest tornado in world history went 700 miles, was it? Yeah. 700 miles across the middle of the country. I think it went from Missouri into Illinois into Ohio. Almost in a perfect straight line. Where was it going? Wycliffe Tower. Yep. Tesla was a genius, and that device he made really did quite a bit. So that was attributed to him as well. And you think they don't control the weather today, or they can't? That's more than 100 years ago. Oh, and we have I got this from a really brainy lady, in case you're wondering. I need to give her credit. She's out of New Orleans, and she is smart. Too smart, probably for her own good. I'm sure she causes a lot of trouble with the men that she's had in her life simply because she is so smart that I don't think that she can find anybody that keeps up with her, which is kind of a shame, you know. But she's brilliant. And what we don't know for sure, but what she speculates, is that the Great Dust Bowl was also the effects of this marvelous machine that he built a long time ago. We got another one of those towers built in Texas a few years ago. Lorraine, off. No chew that. No chew that. Lay down. Get your bone. No chew that. Get your bone. Leave it. She's got to chew on some weird stuff. She's been doing pretty good for a while. Get the bone. Okay, we're continuing with the alphabet series. I thought I had something spectacular for letter I. And I just don't remember what was crossing my mind, what associations I made with that. So this is going to be letter I. This is Friday the 27th. I really screwed up on my calendar the other day. Yeah, it's the 27th, so I misstated one of my shows. Well, it's easy to get it wrong when you wake up in the middle of the night and you don't know what day it is. Lorraine, leave it alone. Going after my calendar now. What did I say? Get your bone. She needs a job. Everybody needs a job. Everybody needs a purpose. Everybody needs to feel wanted. Everybody needs to be made of. Everybody needs to be contributing. Made to feel that they have something that makes them worthy. Because they need from other people as well. Most of the country today, the United States of America, most people operate on the communist philosophy and they don't even know it. They aren't self-aware. They don't realize that their attitude is not a good attitude. Things have been so screwed up, things are so brainwashed that we have no sense of proper ownership, and as a result of that, we don't enter into proper agreements. We make assumptions all the time. The psychological contract, where assumptions, and when you're a member of the culture, you know what the assumptions are, what the rules are, and you live by those. But when you invite outsiders in, they don't live by the same set of assumptions. They don't understand the psychological contract. They are at a big loss and a great detriment. And when you bring them into the United States of America, and they aren't prepared at all, it's really a bad thing that you're doing to them. It is not a nice thing or a good thing. And you bring them in here where they're pariahs and the people are upset because resources are taken. I mean, hotel rooms are out of sight now. The amount of money for a hotel room is horrible. Why? Because they're taken up by the illegals. The government pay top dollar and get the better hotels to put the illegals in. So even these cheap-ass, flea-bitten hotels that used to be about $30, $50 a night are over $100. And on weekends, they jack the prices up. You're putting pressure on the entire population, and you're doing it on purpose because you are waging a war against the people. You don't give a damn about anybody or anyone else, just yourself. Just you and your family and how much money you're putting in your pocket and putting in your accounts overseas. It's really hard to believe that we have got this jackass in office. He belongs in prison. Maybe in a psych ward, maybe in a rubber padding and a doggone straitjacket so he can keep his hands to himself. Lorraine, get your bone. What did I say? Get your bone. Good girl. Down. Folks, things have not been going well, and I wish I could tell you that it's going to go better. But my guess is probably the wrong guess anyway, but I don't think it's going to go better. They're busy manipulating the hell out of you. They manipulate the markets. There is no freedom. There's no free market at all. The price of gold is set in London every day. They decide what it's going to be valued at. That's not a free market. Not a free market for us. The same families run the whole planet at this point, pretty much. Them with a few other families. And they all come from the same neighborhood. There's a specific suburb in Babylon. Yeah, Ancient Babylon from a long time ago. They were all from there. These are the descendants and their children that are running this thing together across the whole planet. And it is a giant, it's a giant conspiracy. It's not a theory. This is a way of life for them. They predate upon others. They set up nations to wage war against each other decades in advance. They make it happen. And right now, you got the dumbest ass in the world running a horrible war, and you've got people that call themselves conservatives, like Bill O'Reilly. That jackass is out there pushing for war, saying, oh, Putin's going out, that's why he's getting worse, he's losing. What a lying son of a bitch that asshole is. I think Michael Savage nicknamed him the Leprechaun. He's way over 6 feet tall. He misleads this public terribly. They give him specific hit jobs. He's a hitman, a psychological hitman. He was the one that mocked the birthers so that you wouldn't find out about the past. You wouldn't vet Barack Insane Obama. Look at what that did to the country. And how do you like Barack Insane Obama's third term? I can't wait till his fourth term. They stole this thing. They've got a giant police state in effect right now. They look at everything. Lorraine, lay down. She wants to be. Started waking up in the mornings and, a lot of lovey-dovey stuff. And, she likes that. And this morning it didn't quite happen that way. So she's not getting the attention that she really wants to get. And I spoil her way too much. She's got 2 cuts on her front legs from the little shirt they gave her to wear to keep her wound compressed so that the liquid would subside, get reabsorbed in her body. And the big cut, it's about a 6-8 long incision. It was horrible. That would heal up. So that's healed up. Now we got the 2 little ones to deal with. They're nasty looking things. They got her hurt. She hates it when I give her the medicine. My God, she thinks I'm going to give her the medicine. And she jumps up on my papers up on the couch when I'm trying to sort things out. Damn, I hate that because it throws everything off. I work hard to get things organized, and there she is, jumping all over the place. And then I grab her, and I grab those jaws, the jaws of death, and I put my fingers in there. I grab a hold of them, and I force them open, and I toss those pills in there, and then I hold them and blow on her nose until she swallows up real hard, and then she's happy because she knows she's got them in her. But I give her a couple of pills for the purposes of down-regulating her so she won't be bouncing off the walls and hurting herself because I can't have her jumping. She's super athlete, super dog. And the other one is for pain management. And they're all psychiatric meds, and they're not good. Not good on humans to begin with. And I don't know what the heck they're doing to her, so I'm real careful because it alters behavior and it becomes unpredictable. And she is so close and so ready to be in public, even in restaurants. I'm working on it. We're making progress pretty fast. I figured it'd be 2 years. We're at 14 months, and I took her into one restaurant, and she did quite well. And so she's happy if she's right there and, being called upon to walk, to heal right beside me. Yeah. So I'd like to be able to find, I heard there was a gymnastics program for dogs, an obstacle course where people give their dogs complex commands to do. And I got to do some more research. I got other projects I have to take care of first. These taxes and all this stuff don't make any sense. It's all designed to screw us up. It's very cruel and unusual punishment. To have to do that level of accounting and not owe any taxes. And if you don't comply, then there's a problem. It's like, well, fine, I'm saving my damn receipts for you. You want to go through that shit? Okay, fine. You treated my parents like a couple of criminals. You treated them so horribly when you audited them that my dad says the next time he's going to take a shoebox and put all the receipts in a damn shoebox and just pour them out in the damn desk. They want the receipts, they can do it themselves. I got bags of receipts. In the honor of the memory of my parents, you want to audit my ass? Fine. I got the receipts. You're the one that gets to go through them. My back can't handle this anymore. I can't afford to keep up the equipment to keep the organization that I've had before and keep the scanning up. The stuff that they force us to do in this country is unconstitutional. It's a bunch of bullshit. We're not free at all, and they harass us from one end to the other. It's going to get worse. You can see what they're doing with the gun laws and ATF right now. It's absolutely horrible. And they're jacking us around as much as they can to antagonize us and cause trouble. And you're going to do that with people with guns? They're insane. They want to kill people. They are killing people. They've got a program going on right now by the Department of Defense. I mean, I would love to see the FBI taken over by the military. Take them all into custody. Every one of them. Protective custody. That's what we'll call it. It's for their own good. And take their damn records too. And then go through everything with a fine-tooth comb. Maybe each intelligence branch of the military do their own independent investigation. So you have Navy intelligence, which is supposed to be so damn good. Army intelligence, which they say is a oxymoron, which actually has been pretty good. And then you got Air Force intelligence. So you have three of those branches going over that and sorting out what these FBI guys have been committing for crimes. And then you charge the bad ones. And the good ones, well, you eventually let them go home. And you're going to say, well, we couldn't live without an FBI. Yeah, well, we did for the first 150 years or so. Well, let's see. 1913, it was called the Office of something or other. 1913 was a terrible... Lorraine, lay down. Down. It was a terrible year for the country. They gave us the Federal Reserve money magic system whereby they enslaved us all. They gave us the Anti-Defamation League, whose sole purpose and sole weapon is to defame people. They make up hate. They make up crimes, if you will. They invent them and apply those to people and destroy their reputation. So you can't have an honest discussion about anything because it's anti-Semitic. Even anti-Semitic is not a proper term. It's not applied properly at all. You see, a Semite is based upon language, Semitic languages. It's a language classification. And the peoples that they're calling Semitic aren't Semitic. And they act extremely against and pejorative against the real Semites. It's amazing what they get away with by constantly saying the same thing, by constantly parroting it. And they control your media. When communists go in to take over a country, they got to take over all of your media and control it all. And how long do you think they've been controlling the media in these several states of America? Not just decades, centuries. And so they have you thinking nothing can be done about it, that you can't get your republic back. Lincoln screwed up the republic, him and his radical Republican Party. They destroyed the republic. Remember, they call themselves Republicans. No, it was a new dictatorship they gave us. They took away the states' rights, the independent republics that authorized the central government. They destroyed it. Lincoln was not a good guy. He was a 3-in-1 individual. He was very conflicted. As a matter of fact, it probably was his wife who pulled the trigger on him. And she framed up her dope dealer, John Wilkes Booth, who jumps down on the stage and screams something about the South as he's breaking his leg jumping from the balcony on the stage. That's where you get the saying that's among people that are in plays, break a leg. You need to know that you don't know much of anything. Much of what we've all been fed is bullshit and lies. Whenever there's been a breakthrough in science, they obscure the reality, the true breakthrough. They change the terms, the definitions, so they can obscure it and hide it and use it against you. The whole thing is weaponized. The psychological aspects are the most damaging. There's a fellow who's still alive today. He's older than I am. Come out of the University of Pennsylvania. He's trying to pass himself off as the father of positive psychology because he can't tolerate his world reputation. You see, he invented, discovered, coined the term learned helplessness, in which you make the victim helpless. You paralyze your victim. You play with them. You torment them. And you kill them. And his family is mentioned by Carol Quigley in the book Tragedy and Hope, published in 1964. Macmillan Press, I think, insisted that Carol Quigley reduce the 2 volumes down to 1. Oh, by God, I wish they'd have published both volumes. It is a hard book to read. There's some weird, twisted things in there that you don't understand initially. And they came up with paperback versions later. And in the paperback versions, they changed things. Why? Because a lot of those families didn't like their names out there. A lot of those corporations did not want to be mentioned. So they had their names pulled out in the paperback versions. You go to the hardback and you'll get the names. And they didn't spell the guy's name right. His family was involved in the takedown of America. Seligman. They took his research and he took it underground from what I can sense and detect. And they come up with even better ways to paralyze and screw up society. And they applied that to the whole society here, all the way across the board. It's how you got a lot of your conflicts. That's how you have a lot of your paralysis. That's why we're unable to take action, because we can't think clearly, because they have screwed us up that much. Thanks to your CIA. By the way, who's the biggest publisher in the world? It's your CIA. It started as the OSS in World War II by Stevenson, a British subject. He started it and gave it to us, handed it to us. British haven't released us on anything. They've had our mitts in us their claws in us the whole damn time. They have ruled us and run us from the background, especially with their bar association and the different corporations. And the big screw up, as far as I can tell, happened right from the get-go. They honeypotted Ben Franklin. Actually, they took him to the Hellfire Club, and I guess they gave him a real good time, because then he signs the Treaty of Paris with a fellow that's representing the crown, the King of England. At the same time, the son of a bitch works for the Pope. So he ended up incorporating America under the Pope, just like all these other countries were incorporated under the Pope. You want a famous example? It would be Scotland. The Treaty of Aberoth. I don't know if I say it right. I've never heard anybody ever pronounce it to me in a conversation. But if you understand that the Scottish people wanted to be independent, and they petitioned the Pope, Il Papa, in Rome, Il Papa, whatever. They petitioned him, and they said they understood their roots. They understood where they came from. Prior to being in Scotland, they were in Spain. Princess Skoda landed in Spain. Jeremiah took her there, and he married off the crown princess to an Israelite that was in dispersion in Spain. And that particular group of Israelites, that particular tribe, had been previously in Greece. And they had an interesting characteristic. They refused to fight against their brothers. They would refuse to fight against the other tribes, if you will, the other sons of Jacob's sons, the boys, the 12 sons. So as a result of that, they would pick up and move rather than fight their brothers. And so they tracked their lineage, their history, all the way to the northern 10 tribes of Israel. And the Pope agreed with them that they indeed were the people from the house of Israel. And he gave them their independence up there. And they got it. So that's the big secret they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know who you are. They want you to call yourself Caucasian. Now they don't want you calling yourself Caucasian. You got to be white. Your ass got to be white. Why? Because it's a nice broad term, not specific. It doesn't have anything to do with your roots, with your real classification. It doesn't have anything to do with what your history is. Because when you know that your history is your grandparents from long ago crossed the Caucasus Mountains, and that's how you got named Caucasian, after the Caucasus, then the next question is, where did we come from before that? And that takes you right to the northern house of Israel. So you are the real deal. And yet you're being told you're an outsider. You are a Gentile, grafted in by grace. What the hell is a Latin word doing in a Hebrew and Greek Bible? Gentilius means non-Roman citizen. It's a big mystery on that word. And then Rothschild, when that evil bastard was on his deathbed and his boys were around him, I think he had 4 sons, or was it 5? I think it was 4. He demanded that they remember his big plan for taking over the world. And the Gentiles get nothing. I say nothing. He rose up on his bed, supposedly in a very dramatic fashion, and collapsed and died at that point. The guy come up with a real wicked plan, put his boys in the different parts of Europe as bankers so that they could manipulate the kings and queens and cause the wars and destroy the countries from within by changing their culture, by changing their values and their ways, and making them go anti-God in particular. In other words, follow the devil's path, convert over to all of those sins and those ways at which we're so prone to doing. If you want to know what those sins are, you go read the Bible. There's a guy called Balaam. He's got a talking donkey in the Bible. That's a memorable story. You should go read that and find out what he did to the Israelites, what he caused them to do, and the results of that, and how he kept trying to. He was paid to curse Israel. He ended up blessing them. A lot of irony in the Bible. I is for identity. What's your identity? I know that I'm a Caucasian. Yeah, I think I am. No, none of us really knows what we are. We can run around claiming we're all kinds of modern this or that and improvements on past models. But the fact is that none of us knows really our roots very well. We don't know how much black blood, brown blood, polka dot blood, yellow blood. We don't know what we really are. I don't trust the genetics people. They're controlled by the same bastards, and so they can pop in little results in there to throw people off. They control the norms. And the fact is this: you've got some Denison in you, probably. You have some Cro-Magnon in you, most certainly, and you have some Neanderthal in you as well. But you don't know how much of that DNA is in you. So when you get down to this bullshit about race is bullshit. We're all mixes at this point. We're all hybrids, if you will. We are all tainted, if you will. Those assholes running around about purity and pure this or pure that. I don't know what to tell you. The Bible has 2 different words for men in it, 2 different types of men in it. And there are some things which we call men today, which they did not call men in the Bible. There are peculiar phrases for that. I'm not here to call cause racial divide and division. I'm not here to perpetuate bullshit myths and domination and all that stuff. I'll tell you this, I've traveled the nation from one end to the other, and I've run into people who are supposed to be white supremacists, and they always seemed well behaved to me, and they just had a different understanding. Okay? They weren't violent. That's nice. And the most important thing to them was surviving. What's wrong with surviving? That's just natural law. You know, God gives us a right to defend ourselves and perpetuate our lives, to preserve ourselves. That's a natural right. It's inalienable, the right to life, which of course the Democrats don't recognize. And Kamala Harris, how wicked she is, won't even tell you about the right to life. What does what I consider one of the greatest documents in the world ever say? The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which is Jefferson's error, by the way, one of his many errors. We know he banged Sally and he had children. So there are black children running around that are descendants of Jefferson. Okay, fine. What are you going to do about it? What's your problem? You know, I mean, people appear as a result of others' actions. We can hardly hold them accountable for everything, but yet there are some people that are so wicked from groups that are so off the charts that they harbor ill will towards the rest of the world and secrets, and they wage wars in really ugly, evil ways. And you'll say, oh no, nobody would ever do that. No, Dr. Kent, why would they do that? Look, you need to stop giving excuses for their bad behavior. You need to observe and acknowledge their behavior and judge them on their behavior. You know, content of their character is kind of an abstraction, if you will. You need to judge them on their damn behavior, on what they do and what you observe. And you don't give them a pass based upon motivation. Oh, she never intended that those poor, whatever it is, secret documents would become public and be used against the nation. She didn't intend to do that. Does the law have intent specified? Oh, hell no, Comey. Comey, you ought to go to prison. He's another big dude who is full of himself, and he should be in prison for his treason. That's all there is to it. Talk about destroying justice and the rule of law. Talk about organized crime. Biggest organized crime in the world. It's got the biggest army in the world, the most funding in the world. Does whatever it wants. Throws its weight around. And you think people love you? They fed us that bullshit back in the world wars. And in a certain sense they did. Because things were so bad and we rolled in. And corrected things for a little while to a certain extent. But we carried on with the lies, with the falsehoods, with the myths. And we perpetuated those things to the point where you can't talk about the truth. Certainly you can't talk about it on YouTube. I got a strike because I actually told the truth. They couldn't handle it. They won't tell me what it is that offended them because I tell so much that I don't know, and they won't talk to me. I'm too small. Please like this. Please leave comments. Please subscribe. Please help me kick ass on these damn algorithms. I want to be selling a couple hundred Bibles a day. I want some numbers out there. I want some income rolling in. And it's not money. It's damn credit and script. They stole all the money and stole all of our labor. Yeah, that group that came out of the suburb of Babylon. And by the way, just so you know, some of the bad guys come out of Egypt too. Especially those that are up in Switzerland. They got a different skull shape. And by the way, skull shape is a greater differentiator of species, you heard me right, species, than skin color. If you read the Bible and you put in the word race, it's awkward. It doesn't work very well. If, on the other hand, you read the same passage in Genesis 1 and you put in the term species, it fits better. Kind after kind. And of course, there are different races of angels according to Pastor Jerry Wiki, and I don't like calling it that way, but that's his conceptualization. There's validity to it. That perspective has usefulness, so it's a valid perspective. Yeah, you got different races of angels. Not only that, you had 200 of those fallen son of a bitches on Mount Hermon plotting against humanity and everything that was on the face of the earth. And they come up with a grand conspiracy. The daughters of men were fair, and they were going to take all of them they wanted for wives, which is just a fancy way of saying they were going to bang them all. They were going to have sex with whoever they wanted, wherever they wanted. The problem was that angelic DNA, they weren't sterile. And contrary to what the Roman Catholic Church will tell you that they can't reproduce, oh yeah, they take this form, our form, when they fall here, when they're here, and they blend right in, and apparently they're so fertile that their seed will impregnate just about anything and create some really weird species on top of that. I know you don't want to hear that and go, oh my God, Dr. Kent can't believe that. That is off the charts. Look, folks, you need to demonstrate some flexibility of mind, because if you don't have more flexibility in your thinking, you're never going to come close to the truth. You're never going to understand things. And I do have flexibility of mind. Even though I'm an old crotchety old fart, I have the ability to take the thinking out there a bit, which gives me the ability to conceptualize a little bit better and understand things better. I love brainstorming with fellow Bible readers as to what's in the Bible and what certain things mean. We don't have to agree upon those things, but when we're respectful and we listen to each other, we hear things that we never even thought of and never considered. And the Bible is written at many levels, so you can pull from it. You can mine all kinds of truth from it. You can invent things from it too. As my uncle told me, I think it was Daniel Webster or Noah Webster. Webster anyway, who was a congressman, and he would go in and he'd propose legislation and base it on the Bible. He'd walk in and turn it around, put it upside down. So his point was, you can prove anything based on the Bible and you can sell it. And everybody had a rough time because he was so knowledgeable about the Bible. And he made them look like fools because they're willing to. He had them convinced that they needed to pass the law this way, and then later he'd come in and say, no, it's got to be that way. So he had a lot of fun with those guys, because I guess they should have had a middle initial G as well, like I should have had, for gullible, as my mother said. I like the Navage system. Forgive me for my sniffling. I think Navage before bed is helpful. I do not agree with their marketing stuff. I don't agree with germ theory, for one. However, I do believe that I believe in pesticide theory, if you will. They spray us like cockroaches with all kinds of materials all the time. And I think that Navage is best used for washing that stuff out so you don't absorb as much. They got some really weird stuff they're spraying in the air. Very toxic, very dangerous. And you know that when Trump first came into office, they stopped doing that. The skies were blue again instead of pasty white. And for a period of close to 6 months after he won the election, about exactly 6 months after he won in November, they didn't spray. Then they started it up again. I figured by then they had the deals worked out in the back rooms. The art of the deal. Who makes deals? Who makes deals with the devil? How often have you compromised yourself or a situation or your own people by making a deal with the devil? How often have you been shafted, taken advantage of, and walk away? Well, I'm going to tell you one dude who was really upset with himself. Woodrow Wilson. President Woodrow Wilson said he was the most unhappy sort because he had destroyed his nation, a once great people's. And that was because they honeypotted him and they forced that Federal Reserve System on him. And he said that there is a force so great that no man dare whisper above his breath against it. At least they target his ass and go after him. So there's a good witness to the size of this conspiracy, which you should call the Babylonian beast system. And that's in the Bible. The roots of it are in there, and the future's in there too. Buy my Bibles. It's the best Bible you can get. When you read it, you will make fewer errors, assume fewer wrong things, have less wrong thinking, less poor ideation, less. You'll make fewer assumptions than you will with the original King James. This is an improvement on the King James. All of Western civilization is built upon the foundations of the Bible. There are several extra biblical books that are important as well that were removed. One of those is 2 Esdras. Same prophet Ezra, just spelled differently because those books tended to come from Latin. Different versions of Latin at that. I'm trying to get a good version of it produced here. So if you want to get the red book, the Apocrypha book, on Amazon, last I checked, it was running about $12. Really tiny print. It's a hard book, hardbound book. And it's got the original King James Apocrypha books in it, but they aren't that good. But still, it has 2 Esdras, chapter 11 in there. And I used to worry and panic that giant eagle, that big 3-headed eagle, I know you run around and you see the 1-headed eagles and the 2-headed eagles, but you don't see 3-headed eagles very much. It's in the Bible. I now realize it's referring to the beast system. 3 heads. The biggest head lay dormant in between, and the other 2 heads are busy fighting, and one of them is going to consume the other one. That's about where we are in that prophecy. So you want to call up Name Publishing and tell them to please put your name on the list for the new Apocrypha when it comes out. I need 3,000 commitments in order to be able to produce it at a level I don't care to do. I don't want to do inferior work. I need 5,000 people. That's all it takes. I got 5,000 people. At least that's what I was told. Who knows? This guy's really quite a nice guy. I don't think he doesn't go back on his word. He says if we get 5,000 people committed, then we can really go to town with it. In 6 months after that, we'll have it. And I got some big plans for that. So you want your country back. You want your freedom. You'd like to avoid this nuclear war that Biden has set your ass up for. Actually, Barack Obama and his wife, Michael, whatever, the transgender dude, they hate this nation. You got to remember that. Look at how much Michelle hated this nation. She still hates it. She wants to nuke your ass. Why do you think they're out there on Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, or wherever the hell it is, out there on an island? And he's got one of the biggest natural gas propane tanks available out there. They had to give him a special permit. Why has he got that? What does he know that you and I don't know? Huge natural gas tank and a generator. What's he going to do with the generator? Oh, what's that used for? Is he going to generate more baby Barack Obamas with a generator? Oh, no. Is he going to generate a tsunami or a tidal wave with a generator? Oh, I don't know. Why does he have to have a huge power source, independent, because they're going to pull the plug on your electricity, in case you haven't figured out. It'll probably be a giant false flag thing. You see, President Biden, in his wisdom, as soon as he took office, he gave the Chinese the contracts to maintain our electrical grid from China. They can shut it down anytime they want. And in case you think that you're fighting China, you need to realize it's the Department of Defense that are waging this biological war against you, this electronic war against you, this intelligence war against you. There are no white hats. The military doesn't have any good guys in it. They're all compromised. Even the ones you worship and think are okay are compromised. Anybody full bird and above is questionable. You get above full bird, it's definite that they're screw-ups. They're in there for a reason. They're in there to pay homage and start wars with false flags and lie and bullshit and like sink the Maine and blame it on the Spanish when we did it to ourselves. I'll tell you what we didn't do to ourselves was the USS Liberty. We had help with the Israelis on that one. And we got away with it. And LBJ was heard screaming in the White House. He didn't care if that ship sank to the bottom of the ocean. He was not going to embarrass their friends Israel. Well, hell, he had just stolen 1,000 pounds of fissionable uranium and plutonium. Weapons material. 1,000 pounds of it from Hanford Refinery alone, and gave it to the Israelis. So they didn't even have to refine their own material to get nukes. Yeah, we gave them those nukes they have. They probably got about 400 of those right now. It's still building, by the way. What are they going to use nukes for? They sure as hell can't even, blow them around the countries around the outside. More nukes than what you need to do that. More nukes than what you need to destroy those countries just immediately around you. Oh, and what was the purpose of the attack on the USS Liberty, in which we lost 100 of our sailors, and it's never been properly investigated? And it was General Moshe Dayan who helped with that, along with some other Israeli leaders. They were going to start a nuclear war. Our big bombers were on the runways, engines idling, loaded to the gills with nuclear bombs. They were waiting for the order to take off. And what we know is that one of the pilots found out his destination. He was going to deliver his payload to Cairo. Yeah, they were going to start a nuclear war back then. And the idea was sink that boat, blame it on the Russians or on Egypt, and then go after them. And by the way, that war, 73, and the war before that, those were all set up by Israel, suckering those people into traps. Egypt got suckered into that thing. They manipulated them right in. By deception thou shalt do war. So who's your identity? What's your identity? Which side are you on? There are only two warring factions on the planet. One of them was descended from Cain, and the other was descended from Abel, who got murdered and was replaced by Seth. So you've got the descendants of Seth and the descendants of Cain. And you got a whole bunch of other people, other species, races if you insist, other nations, other tribes that are being tossed in there by the bad ones against the good ones. So what side do you identify with? Do you identify with Cain? Or do you identify with Adam's son, Abel and Seth? They had the same mother. Eve was the mother of all living. They didn't have the same father. The father of Cain was Gadriel, one of the 5 leading fallen angels that conspired on Mount Hermon against the earthlings. And they vowed to not even discuss it among themselves once they got off that mountain. And there were 200 of them. So if you think you got trouble because of the angel Gadriel, which the short nickname for him is Gad, from which you get the word God, and you see this Bible that I got down below, it puts in Yahweh's proper name. Yeah, his real name. It was removed from the Bible in about 275 BC by Ptolemy II, who was in Alexandria, Egypt, producing the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Old Testament. Now, why was he translating a Hebrew and Aramaic Bible into Greek? Because the Israelites were in dispersion. Most of them were outside of Jerusalem and Israel at that point. They were dispensed up into Greece. They had been Hellenized. They spoke Greek. In order for them to have access to the Bible, Ptolemy II translated it. And while doing so, he removed the proper name of Yahweh, YHVH. They didn't have vowels. You couldn't buy a vowel back then in Paleo-Hebrew. Those were added later in modern Hebrew, which is still a pretty old language. And Yiddish has nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. They don't like me talking that truth. I think they want me to hide that. They also don't want me to tell you that there is no private business. There's no private corporations. They're all incorporated under Rome. There's one big corporation. That's it. They're all in existence under canon law. So the Pope really does run the whole thing. That's the big ass head in the middle that's asleep right now. It's coming awake. Wait till that beast raises its ugly head. Wow. And I don't know which one's going to win of the other 2 heads. I don't know if it's going to be the City of London with its attorneys and corporations, the Crown Corporation with their bar association, or if it's going to be, and the bankers, the banksters, their money magic, or if it's going to be the one that's sticking its head up out of the trenches in Washington, D.C., running the war machine, the enforcers for the beast system around the planet. One of those is going to survive. Which one do you think it's going to be? Look, folks, if you've stayed with me this long, I think you got a full blessing. I think that's a good thing. Don't be afraid to speed up my videos. Don't be afraid to listen again, because you're going to hear things you didn't catch the first time. Matter of fact, the same would hold for me. You know, see, I was gifted, but my gift is a burden. And I asked for this back when I was about age 33. About the same age Joshua was when they went after him. I said in my prayers, foolishly asking for a double blessing. Oh well, I read it in the Bible. Elisha asked for a double portion. And Elijah told him, you don't want that. It's a little too much. Folks, read the Bible, access the mind of God, the mind of Yahweh. God is a generic classification, if you will. It's a classification, and now it's not a proper name. It doesn't identify. It does not help you identify which God you're worshiping. It doesn't help you form that personal relationship, which I think your salvation ultimately depends upon. Your very existence depends upon it. And you press in. And if you follow the example of Yahshua, You don't do anything outside of Yahweh's will. And Yahshua explained things to you very well, but they made up some weird religions off it. This Christianity or churchianity, it's got a few twists in it that aren't accurate. Read the Bible. You'll find out that there never was supposed to be any religion called Christianity. It was known as the Way, or the faith of our fathers. That's how Yahshua himself referred to it. And if that's what he called it, that's good enough for me. What about you? Do you want his blessing in your life today? Do you want his help in restoring this republic? Don't you think that we need him to step in and fight for us because what we're dealing with is way too big for us alone? You were never intended to be outside of a relationship with your Heavenly Father. You were intended to rule with your Heavenly Father, not against your Heavenly Father. Yahweh bless.